actually a dementia expert. This is YouTube after all, so forgive the title. But I do have a lot of personal experience with dementia. My father currently suffers from dementia. He is, I think, Joe Biden's age. His brother suffered from dementia and died recently. His other brother also suffers from dementia. Um, I'm 48 and I have not been diagnosed, but obviously it's something that concerns me. I mean, that's three brothers, one of which is my father, having the same illness. But my expertise goes as far as dealing with three people who suffered from dementia. So I have, again, personal experience. I know what the symptoms look like. And it is from that context that I'm going to be commenting about Joe Biden. So, yet again, on this channel, you get a very unique perspective that you're not going to get anywhere else because, just the motives are different. I'm not here trying to run a business or be famous or make money, and I'm not in a tribe. So that's going to result in a very different perspective many times, and this is going to be yet another example. So before I tell you my perspective, I'm going to let you know what you're going to see elsewhere, or what you will see elsewhere, so you can see the contrast. So I think an overwhelming majority of the people are just going to focus on how bad things looked. People who have been resisting the rhetoric about Joe Biden being not able to, last another 4 years, or just being, falling apart. People who've resisted that are, most of them, only the most dishonest ones, like perhaps Brian Tyler Cohen. Most of them are going to come to terms and admit how bad things looked. Obviously, the right-wing media, they're going to be all over it. So you're going to see a unique transition where you have left-wing and right-wing media kind of in agreement. Right-wing media is going to be joyful because this is good for their guy, Donald Trump, but ultimately, previously they were being dishonest. Invisible chair nonsense, him literally sitting down in a chair and they act like there was no chair there. They're still saying that. So they were playing games, but now they have some real material that's something legitimately, there's no way to spin it. This is clearly did not look good. However, it still doesn't really match the rhetoric that we've been given, which is, Joe Biden doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know what day it is. He's confused. He's lost. He's wandering around. That rhetoric is still being used, and it's still, in my view, not accurate. I even just watched a Piers Morgan Uncensored where he had Cheng from TYT, and he referenced that Joe Biden didn't even understand what half the questions were, or something to that effect. I watched the whole debate. I didn't see that. I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong. I never saw him what was the question? Or, they ask a question and he's answering another question. I mean, unless he's deflecting, right? Or dodging. But the idea of them asking him a question like, Joe Biden, what do you think about the economy? And he's just like, the economy, what do you mean by like that? That wasn't a thing, right? What I saw was him struggling to communicate, not him being confused. I didn't really see confusion. I saw him stumbling or struggling to communicate. He had his talking points that he was supposed to deliver, and he was tripping over his words. I know he's got the stutter, but that doesn't fully explain everything. But ultimately, it was very, very rough for him to get the words out that he needed to communicate. But again, I didn't see a confusion, but yet that's the rhetoric that Pierce Morgan used. So yet again, we have a situation where the truth is bad enough. He looked really bad, right? It's definitely very concerning. But yet, rather than focusing on that, they always manufacture some other rhetoric that's more extreme. So the idea that he's just confused as the questions are. So that being said, the people who, so that's going to be a majority. So what about the people who are going to defend him, right? Because hey, I'm making a potential defense video for Joe Biden. What's a contrast between what I'm about to say versus what you'll hear elsewhere? Well, I think most of the defenders and apologists will just avoid this topic and choose to focus on Trump's lies or something about Trump or just whatever else. They don't want to talk about it. They just want to hide from it. Those who are really dishonest and desperate to defend him, which I am not, will focus on that he did better in terms of substance, which is accurate. But that's kind of being sneaky. The fact that he legitimately did better with the substance, which he did, that's separate from the problems that we all saw last night, right? That doesn't wash it away. That doesn't make it, much less concerning. That's kind of cope, right? So as a person who has experience with people that have dementia, and what as an objective person, not in a tribe, based on what I've observed, what do I think is an actual legitimate good faith defense of Joe Biden? First of all, let's start. And you see, when you're not in a tribe and you're not caught up trying to defend one side or the other or whatever rhetoric you're trying to push or promote, maybe you've been saying certain things and you feel like you need to back that up and you don't want to say something that contrasts too much. When you don't have those constraints, when you're completely free as I am to speak my mind and say whatever, and therefore your thought process is free to see things truly as they are and raw, because you're not using filtered lenses, you can see things that many others won't. Those who are against Biden are going to just be focused on this validates what they've already been saying. Those who are defending him, but now see how bad things are, they're just going to focus on how bad it looked. And I think they're going to be influenced a lot by what a lot of other people have been saying, and they're going to lean in that direction. And again, those who want to defend him are just going to hide away from it and come up with the excuse that I gave before. But if you look at it objectively and you really think about what happened, I think the first thing you start with is, doing, and this requires a little bit of critical thinking and analysis and, really getting into the space of these two individuals, their lives currently, and the event last night. And when you do that, one of the first things I think that you would want to pick up on is, outside of the stress of the cases, which I don't think is necessarily all that much stress because, Trump has been getting away with stuff for decades. And even now that he has had to pay some fines or whatever, still, first of all, it's hard to overwrite decades of programming where, you're above the law and you just get away with stuff all the time. 9 lives. It's hard to just get that out of your head. So I think it's hard for Trump to not, that's why he's falling asleep in the trial, because it's not even really phasing him as it should. Not saying it's not phasing him at all, but it's not phasing him as it should. He's not taking it seriously as, a normal person would, because normal people are used to consequences. He's not, right? So what that means is, even with the stress of the cases and things like that, and if he loses the election, that puts him at great risk legally. Even with that, I think Donald Trump has a chill life. He's living in Mar-a-Lago. You know, he's what's his life? Spending all day on Twitter, tweeting a bunch of memes and nonsense on whatever his website is, True Social. Um, he's going to rallies and getting people calling his name, Trump, 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 getting celebrated all over the place. I mean, all these people online that are chasing that, you know, I forget what it's called. Not adrenaline, but there's that. It's like a chemical response when you go online, you post something, you get likes and validation, the endorphins, right? So he's getting the endorphin highs every day, all day long. That's Trump's life, chilling, doing his little tours, and everyone telling him how great he is, and being celebrated like this cult leader. I mean, there's people out there crying, literally crying about Trump and whatever. That's how connected they are. So he's being treated almost like a deity of sorts. So to me, when I look at that, a billionaire living in a resort, going around getting celebrated, to me his life is chill, right? And then I look at Joe Biden in contrast. Joe Biden's the president of the United States. That's got to be extremely stressful, especially if you're Joe Biden. As old as he is, the pressure he's got to be under, all these people talking about his age and feeling he needs to maybe prove himself or what, who knows what he's going through. And he's got a whole administration, and he's got these progressives saying one thing, he's got the establishment Democrats saying something else, and you know everything he does is getting so judged, and it has major consequences. I don't know how he feels about what's going on in Gaza, but let's put it this way, man. I wouldn't want Joe Biden's life right now. Just being president, that's stress. So when you start from that perspective, you're dealing with two people that are very old. Those of us who live in reality, we don't look at it, Joe Biden's old and Trump is not old. Two guys that are well past their prime, well past retirement, who both seem to be suffering from, mental decline or cognitive decline. I mean, Trump on a daily basis struggles to communicate, just be coherent in whatever he's saying. And that's just the norm for him. He, it's frequently he has his moments where, people interviewing him, talking to him, or he's on the stage and he's slurring his words or whatever. And then he has moments where he's chilling and, he could sound kind of reasonable and he can get it out. And I think the debate performance last night was one of those moments. Joe Biden, same way, right? He has his moments. He doesn't struggle to speak as much. I mean, last night was really, I think, sort of a departure. I mean, I'm not in the administration, so I don't see him on a regular basis. But just based on how I see him communicate on a regular basis, whether it's interviews, whether it's press conferences, he normally can communicate much more effectively than Donald Trump. Donald Trump presents better. He's a reality TV star, so when Trump is talking, Trump says nonsense, but he says it with confidence and smooth, and he projects. So if you're not really listening to the substance, he can sound a lot more. He sounds a lot, younger and sharper than he actually is. Whereas Joe Biden, he's raw, right? He doesn't have any sort of performance abilities in terms of improv, acting, or he's just an old politician, well past retirement. So any little, mistake that he makes or anything that's beyond perfect, it's raw. You can see it very clearly. So that means that, if they were exactly at the same level cognitively, Trump would seem much sharper and much younger than Joe Biden. That's if they were at the same exact level. I know they're not at the same exact level, but just consider that for a bit. So I'm going to jump from that to my experience with family members who have dementia. I think if most of you guys met my father, I don't think you would recognize that he has dementia, right? My father is not stumbling around lost. He's not, saying a bunch of nonsense, or, I mean, he's mostly the father that I remember, his personality intact, and most times he's all right. I think Not unlike Joe Biden, because Joe Biden normally communicates well. His presentation has just his presentation has been pretty bad for a while. That's a thing that's consistent. He'll say something of substance. He'll communicate well in terms of the words and substance, but he'll look just so old and weak. I mean, you catch him off guard. And that's the next thing, too. We see more of Biden raw, right? We don't get to see Trump not on stage, not orchestrated, just Trump, walking into a room or standing around waiting to do something or whatever. Trump idle. We don't get to see that. We get to see Joe Biden idle. So again, it's like we have a magnifying glass to Joe Biden. Every little thing is amplified, it's in our faces. Whereas Trump has a lot more, like you got to pay more attention to see where he's at. But that being said, when you're dealing with two people that are really old, that are suffering from cognitive issues clearly, this is what you got to realize. Just like how the election is not, well, let's say before the debate, just like how the election has been very close, right? So it's like any one of them could win. Trump could win. Biden could win, right? I think it's a similar thing when you think about their cognitive abilities. Either one of them could have a bad moment at any point in time, right? Trump could do an interview right now and say some real craziness, right? He could just start slurring his words or whatever. Or he might do an interview right now and be chill, right? They're both unstable in that way, such that things last night could have easily gone the other way. Joe Biden could have been in one of his moments that I'm used to seeing him in right now, which is still a really old guy and looks really old, and he stutters or whatever, but deliver the goods, communicate what he's got to communicate, say what he's got to say, right? He could have done that last night, right? He could have very well done that. Meanwhile, Trump could have been the one having a bad night. Trump could have been the one last night that he's just off, like he gets very frequently. He could have been off last night and can't stay focused and slurring his words and saying some crazy stuff. That's the thing. When you have such a close race, either one of them, right, could win or lose. When you have two people with cognitive issues, both of them really old, at any moment, either one of them could have a bad day, right? So the conclusion that gets me to, that I think this is the only good faith, sort of feasible defense that you could give of Joe Biden, is I guess I'll start with myself. I'm 48 years old, much younger than Joe Biden. With the stress, and I've seen what happens to me when I'm under a lot of stress. I've been on a lot of stress lately, and when things get out of control, my cognitive abilities suffer immensely. I've seen myself struggle with people's names, not like a good friend or something, but just somebody whose name I should know, or just something, and it's scary as hell, man. And I'd be like, oh, am I getting dementia as well? But this is what happens when I get really stressed out. Also, lack of sleep. I just did that 24-hour drive from Miami to New York. And when I drove down, at the end of the drive, my brain was really, really slow, right? So I had to drive at the minimum speed that I could drive safely at, giving myself a big margin of error because I was very slow in processing. So my reaction time would have been very bad. Some very, very basic tasks, where it's like coordination. I think I remember, I don't know if it was on the drive, but I was trying to move the USB-C cable like behind a shifter or something like that, and it just seemed way more complicated than it should have been. Because that's where I was at. My brain was just really, really handicapped in that moment, and that was sleep deprivation. I've seen myself under stress, and under stress, I again struggle to like right now. That's not why it is, but even though I am under a lot of stress right now, but struggling with words, you know, and struggling with some very basic tasks. So if that's the kind of stuff that happens to me at 48, and just to also qualify, the work that I do is highly skill oriented. Um, Tiny details have massive consequences. I'm not in the medical field, but it's kind of like that. In the medical field, you make a small mistake and somebody dies. Now, I'm not dealing with life and death type situations, but I can make a small mistake. And let me just give an example, without giving you too much details. But I could easily make a small mistake that could put a client out of business, that could create so much damage for the client that they actually go out of business as a result of my mistake. Small, trivial mistake. That is the level that I have to operate at. So in terms of where I'm at mentally, I'm able to do such a job. But even with, operating at that high of a level, high stress environment, fast paced, you know, very extreme consequences for making mistakes. Even someone like myself who can handle that, when I'm under a lot of stress, I am human, I'm not a robot. I have found myself to struggle with basic things. Um, I remember the other day I was trying to park my truck and I was talking to my cousin on the phone. My driveway's a little narrow. I don't know if it's that narrow that I struggled. I actually paused at the top of the driveway and I was like, I can't do this. I need to be off the phone. I cannot navigate down my driveway and talk to this person at the same time. So anyway, so that's just to give you some examples of what can happen and how your brain can respond to certain things. Now let's get back to Joe Biden. Joe Biden's going to be under a lot of stress in general, just being the president of the United States. Then this debate would have been very stressful, a lot of pressure, people saying he's too old, blah, blah, blah. I mean, think about the pressure of being the president, and on top of that, this big debate coming up. And I'm sure he knows that he has his moments, good days and bad days. What happens during the debate, if it ends up being one of those bad days or bad moments, what's that going to look like? So I can say from my experience and how I deal with pressure and stress at its limits, which I would think Joe Biden would be at, if I were dealing with those things and as old as Joe Biden, I wouldn't be surprised if I performed the way Joe Biden did, right? Being as old as he is, meaning, just like when you're younger, you could take stuff more, you could fall down and you heal faster. You can take injuries and heal faster. You can take lack of sleep and be all right. When you get old, your tolerances drop. So you have someone who's older who doesn't have the tolerances that somebody younger would have, and then you're putting them under extreme pressure of being the president, and then this big debate, and then he knows he's got cognitive issues. He's not 100%. He knows he has his moments. And I think just like my father, it's not necessarily something that's on a schedule, right? So he would have known that, on that debate night, his brain might decide to do something else. So I can honestly say, based on my experience, if I were Joe Biden, it wouldn't be shocking if my performance was similar to Joe Biden, right? And again, contrary to the rhetoric that we hear, Joe Biden he was not somebody that was on the stage that was lost, didn't know what was going on, didn't understand the questions, was confused, couldn't think. I think he knew where he was at, he knew what was going down, he knew what he was being asked, but he kept losing himself while he was talking, which again, I've seen those symptoms in myself on a more subtle level, definitely not on the level that he has. And first of all, we got to start with what he looks like. He looks bad. He looks really old, right? So already it's a disadvantage. And then you add to that him losing his thought process. He's trying to say something. And again, I've experienced those symptoms. And again, my work is very, very detail oriented, high pressure, high stress, fast moving, Small mistakes can have massive consequences, right? And I can get down with that, but at my limits, I can struggle with some very basic tasks. It's just we all have our limits, man. And not being a robot, you push things too far. I mean, again, he's old. He's old. He's got cognitive issues, a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. So I don't think what happened was really that shocking, even though I didn't expect it to be as bad, right? I think that stress alone, combined with him having cognitive issues, right, could account for what happened. Meaning that he is not nearly as bad as he appeared. Because just like me, that I could do high level job, right, very technical, right, high pressure, I can do that. But me at my limits, I can get to the point where I'm operating with a severe handicap, struggling to do just basic things. The same guy that's doing this high level stuff, struggling to do basic things. So to me, that could explain what we saw last night. Not a person who is falling apart and doesn't know where he is, and how can this guy lead the country? And even though that is a factor, because it's a high pressure job, and what happens if something stressful happens, like Russia starts a war with us, I mean, legitimately, and this is what happens when you're making good faith arguments. Legitimately, that could be a problem because he needs to make decisions. He needs to be decisive, and if he gets in his moment where he breaks down because of the stress or whatever, and he's sitting there, waffling around while Russia's firing nuclear missiles on people, like, should we fire back? Like, what I mean? Like, that can't be the thing, and that might be a situation where unfortunately, might have to have Kamala step up or something like that. I think that's 25th Amendment type situation. So that's a legitimate concern in terms of his behavior last night. But in terms of generally speaking, I don't think last night demonstrated that Joe Biden is some kind of a corpse that's just lost and can't manage anything and doesn't know what's going on and he's disoriented. Like, I didn't see any of those signs. I just saw him losing his words, forgetting what he was supposed to say, which again, I have seen those symptoms in myself as a result of high levels of stress. I mean, it could also be a combination of me not sleeping well, but either way, I can be in a state as a person who can do high-end stuff. That same person can be in a state where I can operate well below my capabilities, because in that moment, it's kind of like, I'm mentally handicapped because I'm tapped out. So that's the only legitimate, defense that I could think of, that would make sense for what happened last night. And again, I want to emphasize the fact that we still have people being very dishonest. Things were bad enough as it is, but it's like, reality is one thing, it's bad enough, but then they have to present this other thing. So Biden was lost, he didn't know where he was, he didn't understand the questions. I didn't see none of that. If anybody wants to give me any evidence that Joe Biden seemed like he was lost or didn't understand the question, comment below and show me where that happened. What I saw is someone who lost his words, in a very severe way. That was very scary to look at and very concerning. But it was that, not the other thing, right? And like I mentioned before, that alone is something to be concerned of, because again, that's the job, man. Anything could pop off at any time, as far as, something international, something where the president needs to step up and make decisions. And, if he's overstressed, first of all, he's too old. Trump and Biden are too old to be president, man. This is one of the reasons why you shouldn't be president at that age. Because at that age, putting yourself under high levels of stress of the job and then a stressful incident happening, we can't depend on Joe Biden or Donald Trump to be able to deliver what they need to deliver on a moment's notice. What happens when they wake up, Joe Biden or Donald Trump, at 3 o'clock in the morning, talking about the nuclear, we got a nuclear thing going on, we got to react, but we're not 100% sure whether it's, it could be a mistake, or so something where it's not just a simple decision of like, just fire back. Like, he needs to actually think. So you're saying the nuclear thing went off, but there's some uncertainty of whether they actually fired the missiles or who's firing it? So you got to make a decision. Like, do I fire back without knowing 100%, you know, because I feel like I have enough information, or do I just delay and you know that's something you need to be snappy. That's something for a younger person to do, right? I know at my age, I'm only 48, and I need my sleep, man. I wouldn't trust myself doing something very dangerous. Like even like I ride motorcycles. I wouldn't trust myself going for a long ride on a motorcycle without getting my 7, 8 hours. Right? I need 100% because that's my life when I'm out there on a bike. So same thing being the president of the United States. I can't be 83 years old and doing a job where I might have to wake up at 3 in the morning and be sharp and ready to go and like, yo, let's do this, let's do that. Um, anyway, that's all I got to say, man. Um, Joe Biden should not be president. Donald Trump should not be president. But as usual, reality versus the rhetoric is not a match, right? As bad as things were with Joe Biden last night, what people are saying versus what actually happened, it's, in my view, not a match, right? Stress alone could explain, I think, just about everything that we saw last night. But almost no one is going to say that. They're going to talk about he had a cold, or they're going to try to talk about something else, or talk about Trump was lying. But legit, 83 years old. Like, I could see my father doing the same thing. Again, if you met him, you probably wouldn't know he has dementia. But if he was under a lot of stress and had to do an event like that, I think you might notice some issues with my father, right? In that moment, not because that's where he's at, because normally you see him, he's all right, he can communicate, he's chilling. But being 83 years old and then having some level of dementia like my father does, and then you stress him to the limits, he gonna fall apart, man. He gonna fall apart. And like I said, most of the time my father is chill, but he has his episodes. I remember one time he was struggling with trying to make coffee, and he had the cup out, and then he was like, okay, I'm trying to make coffee. He put the cup down and he tried to get the sugar. Then he's like, what am I doing with the sugar? And he was lost. But that's not the norm, right? That's an exception. Just like Trump has his moments, Biden has his moments. Both of them are marginal at best. Both of them are unstable. So last night could have gone the other way just as easy as it went the way that it did. But that's not the way people are going to see it. They're going to see it like, you know what, Biden is really, really a corpse, whatever. But Trump, he's crazy, but at least he's not to that level. I don't think so, man. Anyway, let me see what crazy comments I got, and then I'm going to end this. Jock is in the house. 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, why would he stress when he's out of it? I'm not sure what you meant by that. Unfortunately, I'm reading the comment late. Go over why he was on his toes and this debate. Okay, so I gotta admit I take an L on that. I mean, I got drama. I still got drama going on in my own life. I'm going through some stuff right now. It's different than the previous stuff, but right now I'm struggling with some things that I got to get done. Trying to get my head right on some things, but so that's my excuse. But if I had spent more time thinking about it, my predictions would have accounted for what we saw. Joe Biden doing a speech, I think, obviously I can't be 100% on this, right? This is just my opinion. But if Joe Biden was doing a speech last night, the speech could have actually went down pretty decent, potentially. Not a guarantee. Again, they're really old. They dealing with issues. But I think the speech situation is a little bit easier than this type of debate type of situation, because with the speech, you're doing your thing, right? You practice, you have your things you're going to say. So the main thing is, you want to get your main points out and you want to keep your energy up. I think that's an easier task for Joe Biden to do. But when you're in a debate scenario, I guess props to CNN that they didn't do. It seemed like they didn't do no shadiness because, in theory, they could have given him the questions ahead of time, and I think it went down a little bit different if that was the case. But when you have him with no notes, and that's the thing. I think with the speech, he would have been able to have notes, right? So you're free to say what you got to say. Just run with it. Just listen, American people, blah blah blah. You know, I think that's an easier scenario. But when you're in a situation where he doesn't know what the questions are, he doesn't have any notes, it's just him by himself. I think that's tough because let's just put this. Just to give an example, if he's doing a speech and he loses his thought in something, he can just move on to something else, right? But if he asks a specific question and he's struggling for the exact word that he needs to answer the question, he can't just move on to something else because then it's like you're dodging the question. So then he will be stuck there trying to find the word, and it's not a good look, right? Like he's trying to say, we need better healthcare, and the word healthcare is lost. What's he gonna do in a debate situation? So we need better, But if he's doing a State of the Union, it's like we need better. The American people need more than what's being delivered, and that's what I promise. So he never figured out what the word healthcare. That's not an actual example. I'm just saying this is how it could go down. He never figures out that the word was healthcare, but he didn't need to. It's he's doing his thing. I don't know what I was about to say, so I'm just gonna say something else. You can't do that when it's a debate. You ask a specific question. You need to be able to deliver on whatever message you're trying to deliver specific to that question. So you cannot tolerate situations where you lose your words, unless you're Trump, right? Trump can lose his words and he'll flow, right? So the word healthcare is lost in what he's saying, and he'll just say, "We need the border is out of control. Border's out of control, and the country's falling apart, and Joe Biden is destroying this country." And it's like you even forgot what the question was, right? And a lot of people, especially if you like him, you're not even going to notice that he got lost right there. He can flow like that. Joe Biden can't flow like that. But if he's doing a speech, I just think it's an easier thing. But whether it's a speech or it's a debate, again, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, they're unstable. So they have their moments. So either one of them, like Joe Biden can have a bad speech as well, right? If he got to do a State of the Union speech on the wrong day, it's not going to go well for him, That's the thing. Neither Trump nor Biden can consistently deliver on a certain thing in terms of where they're at, in terms of what they're capable of. You cannot expect either Trump or Biden to consistently be a certain way. They got a moodiness to them. I don't mean actually moody, but you know what I mean? Like somebody have mood swings. So it's like one moment, like I said, my father, right? He could be chilling most of the time. I'll have many conversations with him. Everything's fine. And every once in a while, something shows up and I'm just like, okay, like we might call, he calls me and, the first thing I say to him is, yeah, it rained today and everything, and my clothes got wet and it was muddy. And then 5 minutes later, he's like, how's the weather? And I'm like, it rained today. And he's like, oh, it rained today. Okay. And I'm just like, I just spent all this time. And I'm giving this example in this way for a reason. I want to show you how I didn't mention it one way. I talked about the weather and the mud and, a whole bunch of details. And that completely wiped from his mind in 5 minutes, right? And that's just random. Then the next 5 phone calls, and it's chill. I mean, he's an older guy. He's going to show some signs of being an older guy. But, that's different from, I just told you all this stuff about the rain, and now you ask me how the weather is. So either Biden or Trump, at any moment could have a good moment or a bad moment. One thing that's I think is most consistent is Trump is most consistently unable to communicate, ironically, right? I think in general, you're guaranteed anytime Trump is speaking for any period of time, I don't know, 95% chance probably hired that he's gonna say something crazy that don't make no sense. He's gonna get lost. He's gonna be saying one thing, and then like how they used to do records, with music, and they hop from one track to the next. Like that's the norm for him. That's one thing that is consistent. You can expect that. But in terms of will Trump be able to deliver something that will work for an overwhelming majority of the audience? That's up in the air. One time he just whacked out and talking some craziness that even people that like him are kind of like, The next time, he's chill, reserved, and sound like he's making some sense. But either way, you have this inconsistency and this instability. Um, Separately, Trump saying Putin talked to him over Ukraine invasion, telling Trump it was a dream to take it. That week of prep, someone saw this coming. I think so. I think so. Although not necessarily, like I said, because maybe during the prep he was better. I'll give you another example. I mean, this is kind of on a different level, but I was studying for this test to get a certification for my industry, and it involved a lot of math, and math is one of the weaknesses that I have, and it was tough, but I muscled through, and I was doing really well in the practice tests. I mean, one of the last practice tests I took, I did it in record-breaking time. I finished that thing fast. It was like a 2.5-hour test. I finished it in like 45 minutes or something crazy like that, and got a really good score. And then I went to the real test, and I don't know, man. I think, I mean, the pressure I was under is if I didn't pass the test, I would potentially lose my job. And for the record, I failed the test and did lose my job as a result. So a lot of pressure, and maybe that was a big issue. But here's an example where in practice, like if you saw me doing a practice test, flying through the questions, boom, 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 you'd be like, all right, this guy's good. And then the test time come, and it was crazy. I'm just like, oh my goodness. They had some trick questions, and I wasn't sure, and there was a whole bunch of questions I didn't even get to answer. So I don't know. Maybe Joe Biden was chilling, as much as he can do during the practice, and then the real event came up, and his brain broke, right? Again, I hate to be making a parallel with myself with Joe Biden, but it is what it is. Old and decent versus old and corrupt. I can't use the word decent for a guy that would be okay with tens of thousands of people being slaughtered in the way that they are, and struggling to even pretend to put his foot down on that. Because you can use a lot of rhetoric, but don't really put actions behind it, but he's not even willing to go that far, right? Not even willing, all those people dying, he's not even willing to go out there and use a lot of tough words. I mean, the words they use, they might say that's tough words, but I don't think that's tough words, man. Because when you say stuff like there's no red line, or like he be some extreme, that's not a decent guy, man. Children being slaughtered like that. I mean, the latest thing I saw, they had a Palestinian. Was he clothed? I don't know if he was clothed or not, but they had him on top of the Jeep, driving him around. I mean, that's not a decent guy, man. But I just think the difference between Trump and Biden on that level is, Biden at least, to me, cares about the country to some degree. Trump, to me, cares only about himself. And there goes the mortgage company. Like I said, I got some things going on, but Trump only cares about himself, right? Which makes him extremely dangerous. Someone who puts themselves above all else as the leader of the United States of America, that is dangerous. That is very dangerous. Trump is like, you have two people who are suffering from cognitive issues, but one of them is also crazy, right? That's the thing. I don't look at Joe Biden as crazy. Joe Biden doesn't go around saying crazy stuff, right? If Joe Biden is able to to communicate and say what he wants to say. He's not saying crazy stuff. He will say awkward stuff, awkward old man stuff. What was that? You're a horse face something. You say some old man awkward stuff, but Biden doesn't go around saying crazy stuff. That's Trump. So Trump, you have two cognitive issue people, but one of them, on top of being cognitively challenged, is also crazy and is also, I don't know if psychotic is the word I want to use, but definitely very, very self-interested to the extreme. But these are just two really bad candidates, because it's even tough for me to even say stuff like that, because you could make an argument that Biden is self-interested to the extreme in terms of what he's doing right now. I mean, the poll being what it is, the risk of Trump winning. But again, it's not black and white, because look at how his wife gassed him up after the debate. Does Biden actually realize how bad things are? If that's his wife, talking about he did excellent last night. So, that's how selfish. I mean, the TYT will tell you, Biden is selfish to the max. But in order for me to make that assessment, I need to know exactly what he knows. And I know the power of echo chambers and bubbles. And it looked like he's in a serious bubble. Because again, after that debate performance last night, his wife gassing him up on stage. Oh, you did excellent, Joe Biden. I'm not saying she should be talking about you sucked, but I don't know, man. And again, I know it's not black or white, because what she's supposed to do exactly. I mean, what would I do in her shoes? I know for sure in private, I'm going to say what's up. But what do I say in public? You know what I mean? I don't know, man. I think saying it's excellent, you did excellent, I think that's a little bit much. I don't think that's a right move. Like, if I'm in her shoes and I'm trying to be supportive and I want to keep the energy up, I don't know if I want to go to that level and say it was excellent, right? I mean, if you want to just sidestep the whole debate and just talk about we're gonna win this, or whatever else, but to specifically categorize it as excellent. Does Joe Biden really know what's good? I don't know, man. Stress him to limits or prep him to oblivion. Crazy. Remember, Charles de Gaulle told Truman's administration that he might go with Russia if we didn't support the French in Vietnam. I do not. Got in late. You're already rambling about this for over. Danny! Come on, Danny. Anyway, on that note, let me run out of here and go deal with the mortgage company and see what's going on with that, because like I said, we got some issues over here. I really, as usual, don't have time to be doing what I'm doing online with these videos. It's a factor of how important these things are to me, but regardless, I need to make sure I got my priorities straight. Right. Anyway, guys, this is the Baby Channel. Debate me in the comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Be well.